Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I'm Gloria Moore. I'm Vice Chair with DeKalb Dems and also the co-chair with Steve Parker of the Special Events Committee. We are delighted to have you here to meet our Democratic candidates for Insurance Commissioner and for State School Superintendent. We have the opportunity to elect Democrats to those two critical offices. And you're going to meet the candidates for those offices today. We're delighted to have our audience here and certainly to have our candidates with us this afternoon. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of the folks who made this happen and continue to make this happen. I think this is our fourth forum. We probably have 3 or 4 more to do. All of the folks involved in this, from the planning to actually implementing it, are all volunteers. And we do this part as volunteers so that we can actually spend some money on Get Out the Vote, because that's what's going to be needed once we get through the primary. Then we have the opportunity to support whoever our Democratic nominees are so that they will win. And we can continue to maintain our blue state, right? So this afternoon, you're going to hear from the candidates first, the candidates from that are running for Insurance Commissioner. And then you're going to meet the candidates who are running for State School Superintendent. Before I get to that, however, I'm going to ask our chairman of the board, if you will, the best Democratic Party chair in the state, John Jackson, to say a few words about our organization. And then he'll introduce the moderators, and we will have an opportunity to hear from our candidates. And once the first part is over, I'll come back, give everybody a quick break, and we'll start on the second part, which is the State School Superintendent. So John, I'm going to turn the program over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your Saturday afternoon to be here. It means a lot. And I want to thank all the candidates for stepping up and running to carry the Democratic mantle statewide. And I want to thank the events team led by Gloria Moore and Steve Parker for putting together these great forums. And one of the things I love about the DeKalb Democrats is it really shows the power of everyday people coming together to really push our society forward. And I see that every day with the work of the DeKalb County Democratic Committee. But that's a big reason why we need your donations. So go to DeKalb Dems webpage and donate. No amount is too small and no amount is too large either. So we will take the large and small donations. We are here to serve all of DeKalb County, from the northwest end of Dunwoody to the south east end of Lithonia and Stonecrest. No part of DeKalb County goes untouched by DeKalb Dems. And we try to raise the bar for Democratic politics across the board so we can better impact people's lives. With that being said, I want to introduce our moderators. We have my fellow DeKalb Dems exec, second vice chair, Karen Davenport, who's a retired educator, she leads our world-class ground game that's known for turning out the vote and flipping the state. Karen Davenport. And we also have Susan McWethy, who is a retired educator and a community activist, longtime writer of the DeKalb Dems newsletter that reaches thousands of people across DeKalb County. So I'm gonna pass the floor on to them. And once again, thank you for you all being here today.
Thank you, John. Thank you. We are so happy that the candidates for Insurance and Fire Safety Commissioner are joining us today. They are Raphael Baker, Janice Laws Robinson, and State Representative Matthew Wilson. Candidates, please make sure that your video and audio are on. And as a reminder, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer questions. And after the questions, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement. Okay. For opening statements, we are asking each one of you to state why you feel that you are uniquely qualified for the position of Insurance and Fire Safety Commissioner. Let's begin with Mr. Raphael Baker. Is Mr. Baker here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
Hey,
go ahead.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation. So I'll get right to it. I'm uniquely qualified to be insurance commissioner because I've had over 2 decades of experience in the insurance industry in several different capacities. Started my career as a front desk receptionist, worked my way up, had my own agency for 6 years, and now I hold a leadership position in which I'm hiring, recruiting, training, and developing our next generation of people who are going to own agencies. I've seen insurance from the inside and the outside. In 2019, I lost my best friend to kidney failure. So during that time, I got to see firsthand the problems that are in our healthcare system. I'm running because I am going to be the change that Georgia deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Janice Laws Robinson, can you go next?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Janice Laws Robinson. I am your 2018 Democratic nominee for Georgia Insurance Commissioner. I am excited to be running again to finish what we started in 2018. I am a mom of 2 amazing daughters. I am my oldest daughter. It serves in our United States Navy. So I am a proud Navy mom. I am a Jamaican immigrant, a small business owner, and I am a licensed insurance professional and have worked in the insurance industry for more than 2 decades. I've seen the problems that we face, that Georgia families face with insurance rates in Georgia. And that's why I stepped up in 2018 to run. And that's why I'm running again, so that we can have change at the state level. And I'll be the one to fight for Georgia families and make change happen. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. And now, Representative Matthew Wilson.
Thanks, Karen. Hello, DeKalb Democrats. It is so great to be with my home county party this afternoon. I'm State Representative Matthew Wilson, and for the past 4 years, it has been my distinct honor to represent you at the State House. I'm running to be your next insurance commissioner because it's time that we had somebody who works for us. The past 25 years, Georgia has elected one insurance industry insider after another who have shown historic levels of corruption in this office, and after being elected have refused to hold their friends in the big insurance companies accountable. We have a critical moment this year to elect a leader who will work for us, someone with a proven track record of winning competitive elections and getting things accomplished in state government. I am the only candidate in this race with that experience. As your next insurance commissioner, I will not stop until we have full Medicaid expansion, and I look forward to sitting down with Governor Abrams after November to chart a path for how we're going to get that done in January when the legislature reconvenes. Also, as your next insurance commissioner, I will use every tool at my disposal to rein in our highest in the nation insurance premiums and eliminate discrimination we know is happening in premium setting. I look forward to discussing those in the forum today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. The mission of the Insurance and Safety Fire Commissioner is to protect Georgia families by providing access to vital insurance products and safe buildings through fair regulation that creates economic opportunities for all Georgians. There are 3 main divisions for this office: the Insurance Division, the Safety Fire Division, and the Premium Tax Division. For our first question, we are asking each of you, how will you ensure that regulations and enforcements regarding insurance, fire safety, and premium taxes are handled fairly and equitably for both consumers and providers across all areas of Georgia? Let's begin with Ms. Laws Robinson.
Great question. As the saying goes, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. And what I've seen for far too long is Georgia families and Georgia insurance consumers being on the menu. As the next insurance commissioner, I am committed to creating a communication framework of inclusion so that we as Georgians, urban, suburban, and rural communities have a seat at the table equal to what insurance companies have enjoyed for over a century. Georgia families deserve an insurance commissioner who will put them first and who will fight for affordable auto insurance rates, safe fire practices, and ensure that we have a voice at the state level. I'm committed in this race to make sure that that is a top priority. Insurance companies have lobbyists, and they have had the insurance commissioners in their pockets. What's needed to bring real equity and real change is an insurance commissioner that represents the people of Georgia. And that's who I am, that's why I'm here, and that's what I will do to bring equity to the state.
Thank you. Representative Wilson, can you go next?
Yeah, so look, we know that we don't have to be worried about insurance commissioner being fair to the insurance companies. The insurance commissioners for the past 25 years have literally been bought and paid for by the big insurance companies. What we need is someone who will work for us. And what sets me apart from my candidates in this, from my opponents in this race, is that I'm the only candidate who's not an insurance industry insider. You just heard it from both of my opponents. They've spent more than 2 decades working for big insurance companies, making money for big insurance companies. I come into this, as your next insurance commissioner without conflicts of interest on day one. We need a proven consumer advocate. I've spent the last 8 years as a trial lawyer fighting for Georgia consumers when they've been injured through no fault of their own. And I've spent the past 4 years representing you in the state house, fighting on your behalf and getting results through a Republican-led General Assembly and Republican governor. I'm proud of that record, and that's what I bring to this race. But we need somebody who won't just chart a vision for where we need to go, but actually has the track record and experience to get us there. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Mr. Baker, can you answer that question now?
Yes, so I want to just start by saying that was cute by calling us insurance industry insiders. But I will tell you that that experience actually matters. You don't go to the doctor who is not credentialed, who is not educated, and who isn't licensed. The problem is we've had Republicans in those positions too long. But I'll tell you, I'm like Shirley Chisholm. I am unbought and unbossed. And my other opponent, Janice, talked about a seat at the table. But before people have a seat at the table, equity matters. It is a fact that Black people and other people of color pay more for car insurance than their counterparts. I am working to change that. That is because of socioeconomic factors that have nothing to do with their driving history, such as their credit score, such as their home ownership status, such as, there's so many different things. And someone who is actually not in the industry would not know that. So yes, I'm unbought and unbossed, but I also know what I'm talking about. Additionally, you can't just fight the insurance companies. You actually have to work with them. And I will use those industry contacts to have this conversation. This conversation has started years ago, but it's actually time to start implementing these strategies and actually not just change, having reform.
Thank you. Thank you. Now let's move on to question 2. In light of the demise of the Republican who recently was forced to leave this office, how can we as voters be sure that you will lead with honesty and integrity? Representative Wilson, can you go first this time?
Gladly. Thank you very much, Karen. And the answer to that is simple. Just look at my track record. I'm the only candidate here with a track record because I've served the last 4 years in the State House representing DeKalb and Fulton counties. And I'm proud of that record. One of my opponents just mentioned the discrimination that occurs in premium setting. And he's right. But I've actually introduced the legislation to fix that. I'm the only candidate here with that experience. I would also say, look at all the colleagues and dozens of local and state elected officials who have already endorsed my campaign. I think we're at over 75 and counting. That's because I have worked with them on hard projects before. They have seen me fight. They know my values. They know my values are their values, and they're standing with me in this election.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Mr. Baker?
Yes, repeat the question, please.
Okay. In light of the demise of the Republican who recently was forced to leave this office, how can we as voters be sure that you will lead with honesty and integrity?
Well, ethics matter. And as insurance professionals, Janice can let you know, we're required to take certain ethics courses. But besides that, I have lived this throughout my 20+ year career. I have never had complaints. I have never had any infractions brought against me. And I actually have receipts in these streets. You can go Google me, you can check my records. But even further, again, I'm unbought and unbossed. My opponent talked about his relationships with people that are already in office. But for me, it's people over party. I'm not beholden to these other people in office. I'm not even beholden to the party, even though I represent democratic values. I'm beholden to the people. So because I'm beholden to the people, I will uphold the highest ethical standards, and I will hold my entire department accountable the same way I hold myself accountable. And I'm accountable to the people.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Now, Ms. Laws Robinson, your turn.
Absolutely. When I moved to Georgia more than 2 decades ago, I had no family here, but I was privileged to work and become a licensed insurance professional. And the insurance business is a business of trust and ethics. And I've not sustained a more than 2-decade career because I've not been an honest person. My clients became my family because they trusted me. I'm running because my clients trusted me. I've not been serving insurance companies. As a broker, I represent Georgia families. I find the best solutions for them and their family. And that's the difference. I'm accountable to the people of Georgia. They have asked me to run. They've come to me to ask for my help with these rates because legislators aren't doing anything about it. The insurance commissioner, not doing anything about it. I ran in 2018 because my clients trusted me. The people voted for me. Over 1.8 million Georgians voted for me and gave me their vote of confidence. And I do not take that lightly. I've never had any issues with my clients or insurance companies. And I will take that track record to the state and continue to serve Georgia families with honesty and integrity.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to question 3. Car insurance rates in Georgia are among the highest in the nation. Please explain why this is and if they can be lowered to be more competitive with that of other states. Mr. Baker, it's your turn to go first.
Thank you. So I'll tell you, one of the biggest issues, and only someone who's in the industry would actually really know this, but one of the biggest issues is segmentation. So the way insurance works, all risk good risk, bad risk, oftentimes are put into the same pool. So what that means is that good drivers are often being penalized with the bad drivers. So one of the ways to bring those rates down is to actually ensure that these companies properly segment the risks. That will automatically lower a lot of insurance. But another thing, hey, all of us that ride and drive in Georgia, we know that traffic safety is an issue. There's a lot of reckless drivers. So part of my platform is actually education, and along with that, traffic safety. So all of these things will contribute to lower rates in our state.
Thank you. Ms. Laws Robinson, can you respond?
Absolutely. This is my favorite subject because this is my #1 priority is to fight the outrageous car insurance rates in Georgia. And yes, there are many factors that affect insurance rate, but I believe the #1 factor is that we have bad laws in our state. In 2008, our state legislators and our insurance commissioners allowed insurance laws to pass. Senate Bill 276 passed that allows insurance companies to charge whatever they want. And that is a problem. When you have laws that have vague, ambiguous language that just says, oh, no rates will be deemed excessive, providing that you have sufficient competition in the market, that allows insurance companies to charge excessive rates. Because if you say no rates will be deemed excessive and the insurance commissioner is not challenging it, the lawmakers aren't challenging it, then rates will go out of control. And that's what we've had in our state. As the next insurance commissioner, I will press lawmakers and I will fight to ensure that we have regulation that protects Georgia families. Because not only are these rates outrageous, but as Raphael said earlier, it disproportionately impacts Black and brown communities. Black communities pay 70%, are quoted 70% higher rates. That's a problem. It's like you having a Black tax in insurance. You're being taxed. So I will fight the socioeconomic issues, the credit, the discrimination, and I will also work to have education and improvement for all conversations across the board. But my #1 priority is to stop these outrageous rate increases. I will absolutely defend against these rate increases.
Thank you. Representative Wilson, can we hear your response?
Yeah, the reason why Georgia has highest in the nation insurance premium increases year over year is because we had an insurance insider as commissioner in 2008 that asked the legislature to change the law so that when Allstate and State Farm want to increase your car insurance rates, it goes into effect automatically. It's called file and use. And every commissioner since then has said that was a mistake. It has led to Georgia having the highest premiums every year. I have introduced legislation in the General Assembly to repeal that file and use law. And as your next insurance commissioner, will use my experience in getting laws passed in the legislature to get that done. The other thing we also see reasons why premiums are so high is because of the discrimination that is allowed to persist in the premium setting. Quite frankly, we haven't had a commissioner who has regulated auto insurers in this state for 25 years. We see these insurance companies are allowed to use proxies for race like credit scores, whether you live in an apartment or have a mortgage, to charge you higher rates in your premiums. As your next insurance commissioner, I will not allow that to happen. And if insurance companies are doing that, I'll revoke their license to sell their product in the state. I've also introduced the law to say, you know what, insurance companies, you're making historic profits. We're not going to pay for your Super Bowl ads anymore.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's on to question 4. As debris fires constitute over half of the wildfires in Georgia, and most home fires result from cooking, heating, electrical distribution, and lighting equipment, please discuss your prevention strategies for these issues. Ms. Laws Robinson, can you go first?
Absolutely. We know that Georgia is number 9 in the country for wildfires. We have a pretty high rate. The number one reason most fires start is because people are burning fires without the proper permits from local fire stations and also from the Georgia Forestry Commission. So as insurance commissioner, my number one plan is to work with the Georgia Forestry Commission to implement and streamline a permitting process across the state, but also outside of the permitting process and just making sure that we have that in place. We need education. Education is key when it comes to fire prevention, and we will continue to implement education in the school systems. As an insurance agent, I have worked and gone into schools to do fire safety days and educating our little ones at the elementary level with learning how to fire safety strategies in different skills. So in addition to working with the school systems, the local fire departments, we will also create an education course that we can implement digitally, offer in schools and also in person, because part of my platform is having regional offices across the state, and we will work with our local fire departments and especially our volunteer and rural fire departments that do not have the support and the resources they need in those areas to make sure that the resources are distributed evenly across the state.
All right, thank you. Representative Wilson, can we hear your response?
Yeah, as a former teacher, former middle school teacher, I certainly believe that education for fire prevention is very important, and will certainly continue to be a priority when I'm insurance commissioner. But look, we have so many Georgians that are in crisis right now because we don't have a commissioner and a department that has prioritize what happens after tragedy strikes. I'm talking about the people who live in Noonan and in central Georgia after these tornadoes have come through. And now they're having to deal with insurers who are giving them a raw deal. They promised one thing when they sold them the policy, and now that claims are being made, they're saying, oh, well, we're going to pay you $10 to replace your roof. We're going to pay you $5 to replace your front door. Who in their right mind thinks that that is fair replacement value? We need an insurance commissioner who will be on the ground working for Georgians and making sure that insurance companies are living up to the promises they made when they sold that policy. And that's what I'll do as your next insurance commissioner.
Okay, and Mr. Baker, your response. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Okay, so the problem is these insurance companies are actually keeping their promises. What's happening is that people are buying policies and they don't understand what they're getting. That's why education is important. Like Janice mentioned, education for fire safety, education for insurance. We need educated consumers. But back to the fire safety, few months ago, I lost a close friend. 7 people died in a house fire in Decatur. They haven't found the cause of the loss, but they think that it's electrical. Insurance companies go ahead and send inspectors to homes when people purchase new policies. But one of the things that I'm going to have these insurance companies do is have these inspections upon every renewal, because we know a lot of things can happen during a year. This is going to help prevent some of those, but mitigation of risk is the most important thing. And the way to mitigate these risks, of course, is prevention and education.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Question 5. The Office of the Insurance and Safety Fire Commissioner website and Facebook pages gives thorough and easily accessible information. Probably most voters do not know the scope of the OCI's work and how it benefits Georgians. How would you go about publicizing this vital information beyond the internet? Representative Wilson, can you go first?
Yeah, it's about being a commissioner who's going to be on the ground in our communities, to highlight what the office is doing and how the office can be helpful for Georgians who are just trying to navigate their everyday lives. So that's what I've pledged to do as insurance commissioner. And part of this is Georgians don't necessarily understand how broad the scope is of the insurance commissioner's responsibilities. I had a tragic opportunity to highlight this recently, when we had an 18-year-old football player who was crushed to death in a falling elevator in downtown Atlanta. And what we saw was that elevator had not been inspected by the state insurance department in over 2 years, more than a year past its deadline. I introduced legislation and had a public hearing on it this past session to draw more attention to this. And I heard from so many people who said, I've looked at that card in the top of the elevator, that inspection certificate card before, and never really realized it says insurance commissioner on it. It's unacceptable that our commissioner has allowed this to persist. So we need someone who not only will get out and talk to Georgians who are suffering through these tragedies, especially after the tornado that's come through central Georgia recently, but also who will take what they hear there and what they see there back to the office with them and actually allow it to impact the policy. We're going to do that when I'm your next insurance commissioner, and we're going to have a community advisory board made up of Georgians from all crisscross of walks of life to help us as well.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, can you respond?
Yes, that's easy. First of all, education, again, education, visibility. As we know, most politicians, when they're running for office, after they win or lose, they disappear. But I'm still going to be visible. And then simplification. You mentioned the website of the Department of Insurance. It's still not simple enough. It is not in terms that people can actually understand. And if you go and look on that site, you'll see the hundreds and hundreds of complaints from consumers because their complaints have gone unanswered. So yes, I will be accessible. I will be visible. We will educate and we will simplify that website.
Thank you. Ms. Laws Robinson.
Absolutely. I think that in any relationship, communication is key. One of the reasons I was able to do so well in 2018 is because I traveled the state and I informed and educated and communicated to Georgia citizens who has they've never heard or even know there's an insurance commissioner's office. I will continue to do that, just like I've been doing this cycle, educating consumers, educating Georgia families of the importance and the vital role that the insurance commissioner plays in our lives. Part of my plan, again, regional offices, state and representatives across the state. I was just in Athens this week, and one of the community leaders was saying to me, we used to have someone that come and talk to us about the insurance department. And I said, yes, we'll have that again. So just having a sense of visibility, presence, communication, and having someone that is connected, not just a politician that proposes legislation when they're running for office, but I was fighting for this from 2018. Nothing still has changed. We've had legislators in this office. We've had trial lawyers in this office. None of them have represented the people of Georgia. I am committed to being your insurance commissioner, listening to you and coming together to create solutions that work for you and your family. So that's what I will do.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have time for a question or any questions probably 2 questions that were in the chat. One of our technology people. Let's see. Let's see here. I think we've answered some of them. Let me go down a little bit further. Uh,
Karen, one person asked, how would you combat the rising costs of prescription medications?
hmm.
Don't know that that's within their.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know if that's within their framework, but I don't know. Do any of you have an opinion on that? I don't know.
We took several measures to address that in the legislative session this year, in the past 2 years, to rein in pharmacy benefit managers, and that's part of this. You know, the insurance industry is very complex. They've gotten really good at making a lot of money, and there are a lot of levers in the chain that you've got to work on. There are actually some strong advocates in the legislature who want to work on these things. I've got relationships with them and a plan to get it done.
Okay. Any other responses? All right, candidates. It's your opportunity to make your closing statements. Let's start with Mr. Baker.
Okay, so thank you again for this opportunity. It has definitely been a pleasure. Again, I've been in the insurance industry for over 20 years, and experience matters. But in addition to my vast experience, I have a heart for service and a passion for people. I am unbought, I am unbossed. And, you know, if you want the same old thing, keep electing these so-called politicians. But if you want somebody that is really going to bring about reform, then I'm your person. I am Raphael Baker for Insurance Commissioner, the change that Georgia deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Laws Robinson, you're next.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this evening and to share my commitment to continuing to fight for you and your family. I am your 2018 Democratic nominee for Insurance Commissioner. I am the only candidate in this race that has ran statewide. I won a very competitive primary with a heavily endorsed and heavily funded candidate. I earned over 1.8 million votes in the general election and came within 3 percentage points of winning. My race and the governor's race were the last 2 races to be called because it was that close. We have an opportunity to not start over, but to finish what we started. Over 1.8 million Georgians have already given me their vote of confidence. We have worked hard to get to this point, and I'm committed to working hard to cross the finish line. I've been in the insurance industry for more than 2 decades. I do not work for insurance companies. I work for Georgia families. And I'm here to continue to work for you and your family to have affordable rates, to access to quality, affordable health insurance, and to hold insurance companies accountable. My website is janiceforgeorgia.com. I ask for your donations. I ask you to sign up and volunteer. And let's cross the finish line together. Let's finish what we started and let's get it done. Thank you so much for your time and your listening. You make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, DeKalb Democrats, for hosting this forum tonight. I'm running to be your next insurance commissioner to return the office to you, the people, so that we have a commissioner that is working for us instead of the big insurance companies. I'm the only candidate in this race with a proven track record of winning competitive elections and getting things accomplished in our state government. That's why over 76 of the state and local elected officials have endorsed me over my opponents in this race. But I'm also running because this is personal. I grew up in Griffin, Georgia, about an hour and a half south of Atlanta. My dad was a car mechanic. My mom was a respiratory therapist at the local hospital. And when I was in kindergarten, my dad was injured on the job. He broke his neck and back and was permanently disabled. But it was because of 2 insurance programs, Social Security, Disability, and Georgia's Workers' Compensation Fund, that my family was able to get by, put food on the table, and get my sister and I through school. Our next insurance commissioner, if they're going to make Georgia the #1 place to work and raise a family, needs to understand why insurance is so critical to families when a catastrophic event like that happens. I want to bring that perspective to this office to work for you. If you believe it's time to stop electing insurance industry insiders and elect a true consumer advocate, then with a proven track record, I ask you to join me at MatthewForGeorgia.com, and let's turn Georgia blue together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us in this forum. It has really been helpful to learn about the Insurance and Fire Safety Commissioner's role and about the great candidates the Democrats have to choose from. Thank you. I'm going to turn this back over to Gloria Moore.
Hey, Karen, thank you so much for your questions and your moderating. And thank you to our candidates. I have to say that I learned a lot, which is one of the major benefits of these forums, that I not only learned about our candidates and what their positions are, but also about the particular race and office that you're running for. So thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I know some people have joined us that weren't with us at the very beginning, so we'd like to welcome you and let you know that we are just completing the presentations by the candidates who are running for State Insurance Commissioner. And we are now going to move on to our next group of candidates. Hopefully they'll turn on their video cameras and get ready to chat with Susan McWethy, who is our moderator for the candidates who are running for school superintendent. Another critical election, another opportunity for us to elect Democrats. As in the insurance commissioner race, we have an opportunity to put Democrats in office up and down the ballot. And so I'm so glad that people are taking this opportunity, not only on Zoom, but on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter, to hear from the candidates. And we hope that you will share this information that you're getting today, and share if you're on in any of those platforms, please share this event with other people that are in your networks. If you have questions or comments, any feedback is good feedback, so please put it in the chat or in the comments. We appreciate it. And know that this work that DeKalb Democrats does needs to be supported. So we would love to have your donations, and someone will put a donation link probably 2 or 3 times now in the chat, so that we can encourage you to donate to the DeKalb Dem, so we can continue the kind of work that we do here. And so I'm going to turn this program over to Susan, our moderator, so that she can introduce our candidates for school superintendent and get started. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Gloria. So just a reminder that each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement. We're so happy to welcome all 4 Democratic candidates for state school superintendent. We will begin by asking for your opening comments, where you can state what you feel makes you uniquely qualified for this position. Let's begin with Ms. Hitchens.
Sure. Great. Hey, thank you, Susan. And thank you. Can you guys hear me? They're not allowed to. Yes.
Yes, but somebody needs to turn off a microphone. Okay, thank you. Yes, it's good now.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm Curry Hitchens, and I am currently at a band book fair in Sewanee, Georgia. So that's what's going on behind me, while there's a little bit of noise. But it's a pretty awesome experience. I'm really happy to see so many people here to buy books from the band. So that's great. I'm actually using a pile of band books right now to hold up my laptop. It's pretty exciting. And So the reasons I'm running are because I don't want us to ban books across the state. I want us to teach the truth in our schools, and I want us to do things that are best for students instead of things that are best for just the schools. We want to make sure that we improve education in Georgia, pay teachers more, and make schools safer. And I think we can do all those things. We need to work together, the students and the teachers, to do that. And that's why I ran, was to get to the race to do that. I'm pretty upset that we basically just passed a bunch of bills in Georgia that don't do good things for schools and make it harder for schools to do their jobs of teaching students. And I think we can do better, and I think I can do that. I was a teacher for a couple of years and then became an attorney, went to Emory for law school. Oh, you can't hear me at all? Someone just said. I've got a whole microphone. I'll try to get closer to me. Anyway, let's turn it up.
Much
And
better.
I then was an attorney at Georgia Legal Services and Atlanta Legal Aid, doing a lot of education work. I'm not going to be able to move away from the crowd, probably. I'll try, maybe for my next question, I can move away. But I was away. A crowd came over here. Anyway, I worked at Georgia Legal Services and Legal Aid, doing a lot of education work. I worked with students on their IEPs, individualized education programs, and represent them in school discipline cases. And I want to do that kind of work as well and continue that and make sure they get to stay in school and get the services they need.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hitchens. Now we'll hear from Mr. Jaha Howard.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Thank you
Good.
so much. I'm just happy, really happy to be here. Have fantastic candidates running for this office. So I appreciate you, James and Alicia and Curry, to be here with you on this panel. I'm Dr. Jaha Howard. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, Mays High School graduate. I'm happy to do my education at Howard University a couple of times, Chicago for a couple of years, and back to the Atlanta metro area. So just really happy to be here because we've been loving on kids, and that's really what that's all about. As a pediatric dentist, I have the chance to work very personally with thousands of families all over, not just Atlanta, but folks are coming from all over the state, and some are even coming from outside of the state. And time again, the number one conversation that we have is about schools. And as a business owner and employer, I learned a long time ago, before I even thought about running for office, I wanted to be a part of solutions. So we organized on a community level. And when we saw that there was a need for somebody to run for office and not let somebody who was pushing vouchers and all kind of other crazy things that were contrary to what we were doing in our own backyard, I ran for office. And then soon enough, I became on the board. I was elected to the Board of Education in Cobb County, flipping a seat and able to bring some conversations to the table that had not been undertaken for so many years. We're going to continue doing that work, being on the front row seat of the needs of our kids and seeing what's happening with what Richard Woods has done. We had a front row seat, and now we're going to do something about it. So I'm happy to run and be your candidate for Georgia State Superintendent.
Thank you. We'll now move on to Mr. James Morrow.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We
Thank
can
you for
hear
having
you.
me. All right. As he stated, my name is James Morrow, and the reason I'm running, I've been a teacher and a coach for the past 25 years. I started teaching in 1997 in Little Rock, Arkansas. I taught there for 4 years. After leaving Little Rock, I moved to Las Vegas, and I taught in Las Vegas for 5. I moved here to Atlanta in 2006, and I started out in Atlanta Public Schools, where I was the head football, head basketball, head track coach, and athletic director at Sylvan Hills Middle School. I left there, and I started working at North Clayton High and Middle, and I currently teach at Jonesboro High School. Last semester, I was an AP Human Geography teacher in AP United States History. And when we came back in January, my principal moved me to physical education. I was very appreciative of that. But I'm running because I want teachers to have a voice. Everybody keeps saying, what about the kids? What about the kids? Teachers are tired of being physically, mentally, emotionally, and verbally abused on a daily basis. You know, and then it's like, as far as fights and altercations, many teachers will refuse to break up fights because if they use too much force, and they'll possibly receive 30 to 45 days suspension without pay. So I just want to be an advocate for teachers. I want to speak up for teachers, and I want everybody to know what's actually going on in the school. I'm on the front lines. I'm in the trenches. I've been teaching since I was 22 years old. I'm 47 now, and I only have 5 years before I have 30 years as an educator. So I feel like I'm the best qualified candidate, and that's why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we'll hear from Alicia Searcy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Thomas Searcy, and it is wonderful again to be with everybody. You may remember my first two names. I'm a former state legislator. I served 12 years in the Georgia House of Representatives, first African-American from Cobb County to serve in that role. And I spent most of my time in the legislature working on education policy. When I left the legislature, I returned back to school and earned a master's degree in education leadership. Also went through an intense 18-month superintendent training program and became a superintendent, as well as earned a superintendent certificate from the state of Georgia. I am running for state school superintendent because I'm deeply concerned about the state of education in our state. I think that teachers absolutely need a real champion in a state school superintendent who understands their concerns as an educator. I had a town hall meeting a couple of weeks ago and am still bothered about the things that I heard that are coming from the hearts of teachers. I'm also a concerned parent. I have 3 school-age children. I know very closely what it's like to sit on the other side of the table in an IEP meeting and have to advocate for the needs of my children. I'm running because I'm the only candidate in this race who actually has experience running schools in Georgia. The only candidate who has held a superintendent certificate. And I'm running to make a difference in our schools. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you all. The Georgia Department of Education oversees public education throughout the state, ensuring that laws and regulations pertaining to education are followed, and that the state and federal money appropriated for education is properly allocated to local school systems. The state school superintendent works with the Georgia Board of Education to provide the statewide leadership necessary to ensure the opportunity for each public school student to be successful. They work to create an environment in which local schools and systems are empowered to develop policies and programs that meet the educational needs of their students, that support teachers, and that involve parents and communities in the education process. Question number 1. The issue of critical race theory, sometimes called CRT, has been front and center since the Republicans created a false narrative about it last year. Since then, the state school board and the legislature have both taken actions in response to this false narrative. This issue will be used as a weapon in the 2022 election. How do you plan to address it so that the truth can be told in your campaign? And if you are elected, how would you, as superintendent, make sure that Georgia's teachers and school librarians can be protected from threats and intimidation that could occur? Let's begin with Mr. Howard, please.
Thank you so much for that question. Uniquely in Cobb County Board of Education, we have had a front row seat to this fight. Those that have had the news on once in a while, you probably have seen that we've been right there in the middle of it. We watched the nationwide this kind of organization to make sure that this created boogeyman of CRT was the distraction and the catch-all of all things that Republicans deem socially scary was put in our doorstep. Even more close to home, they put it in our kids' swing set, right? It is a problem. I've been able to be right there, speaking the truth, speaking out and doing something about it. And not just by myself. I'm only one person, but collectively, we're able to rally parents and communities. We've been able to organize school board members from all over the metro Atlanta area, including here in DeKalb County, to make sure that we are standing in lockstep and got the message directly to the governor to expose the mess that's going on. We're all about solutions. We're all about making sure that we're keeping the main thing, and that is academic excellence and making sure that our kids are treated with respect. And that's what we're going to continue to do. We're doing the work. We've been doing the work, and we're going to continue doing the work to make that happen.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Morrow.
All right. So racism has always been a normalized feature of American society. It's not going to go anywhere. No matter where you go, you're going to always find people that have racist motives about certain situations. But as far as the books, I feel like that's a violation of a person's constitutional rights as far as freedom of speech and expression. So no, I feel like no books should be removed. But as Curry stated once in another forum, critical race theory really is not being taught in the schools. So I don't really understand what the fuss is. It's just people just making up situations to cause people to be upset and angry. But I've taught AP United States history for at least 10 years. And in the curriculum and in the standards, we talk about Jim Crow, segregation, the Atlantic slave trade, and things of that nature. So, I mean, it basically depends on how the teacher delivers it and their tone when they're delivering it. But critical race theory, I feel like it wouldn't be an issue if I was elected, because I feel like kids deserve to know everything and they're entitled to know what's going on around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Searcy.
I think we all can agree that this whole debate about CRT is really a political distraction. And I think that's what Republicans have been amazing at, finding ways to divide the country and keep us talking about things that don't matter. I'm concerned about the state of education, how teachers are feeling, and what students ought to be learning. And I'm also the type of leader that believes in seizing opportunities in the midst of challenges. I think we are due in the state for a real conversation about what's in our social studies curriculum. I think that with 54% of our students being students of color, our curriculum across the board ought to be a reflection of who they are and what they bring to the table, and we ought to embrace students for that reason. And so I believe your question was, what would you do to protect students and teachers and librarians? And so what I would do is make sure that we got the right legal interpretation of the law that passed. I would give districts the proper guidance to make sure that the educators are protected, that they are doing their jobs, the thing that they have been taught to do, and make sure that they have the legal protections as well to do their jobs. In the meantime, I would continue to bring people together, educators, parents, students, experts in the field, to rewrite a state curriculum that is inclusive, that celebrates all the diversity of our state, and that properly trains and prepares our teachers to teach a curriculum that is relevant to the students that we serve.
Thank you. And now let's hear from Ms. Hitchens.
Thank you, guys. I moved a little further away. I was in a quiet spot. Some folks came over next to me. Anyway, so I'm still at the Band Book Fair. So obviously I support, should be able to get and encouraging kids to read books about people who are different from them. It's one way to make sure that folks can learn about people from around the world or in their backyard who are different than they are. I do think that critical race theory, as people have already said, is just not kindergarten through 12 schools. It's not even usually taught in college.
Ms. Hitchens, I think you might be too far away from the Wi-Fi or something.
As we've been also way reframes in a way to stand up to do that. No, here we go, guys.
Yeah, okay.
You want quiet? I mean, I guess I'll have to move to my phone for the next one. I can do that. It's just going to get louder as I get closer. So I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. But yeah, I think we need to make sure that people in schools do learn about people who are different different races. We learn about history, real history, not just, denying students to learn about divisive concepts, which is what the bill that just passed does. It makes it so that teachers cannot, oh, I'm sorry. What happened, guys? I'm sorry. I just got a funny message.
We can still hear you.
Okay, good. So I want to make sure that we do soften the blows of these bills that are pretty awful, that make it so that teachers can't actually teach about race and accurate history. We need to be able to address those topics with children, read children's literature that actually addresses those topics, like we're at this book fair right now, a book that I read recently. It's called All American Boys. And in that book, it addresses police violence against a Black child. And it comes from the point of view of a Black child and a white child. And it's the exact kind of book that schools should be discussing. And it's the exact kind of book that would be banned probably in a lot of schools across the state. So anyway, I think we need to not only do the opposite of what a lot of these bills say, we need to fight hard to teach anti-racist things instead. Okay, thank you guys. Curry Hitchens.
Thank you. All right, we'll do question 2 now. This is about House Bill 1084, which passed rather with a little bit of controversy very recently. House Bill 1084 targets transgender students and has the potential to ban them from participating in sports teams that match their gender identities. Can you please discuss how you think this issue can best be handled for the benefit of all students? And now we'll begin with Mr. Morrow. Please unmute your microphone.
I apologize. All right. Recently, there was an event where a young male who was a transgender, and he won a swimming event, and a lot of people had a problem with it. But I feel like they should compete. Their actual, when they like whatever their gender is when they were born, those are the people they should compete against. I don't feel that a man that has transgender into a woman should be able to compete with females. I don't feel that's fair. So no, I don't agree with it. And I just don't feel it's fair for a transgender male to convert to a female and be able to participate in races and different events with actual females. I don't feel that's fair. And that's all I'm gonna say on that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Searcy, next.
As a proud ally of the LGBT community, I can tell you that this is an issue that's an important conversation for young people. I'm also a supporter and believe very strongly in making sure that young people have a voice. And frankly, I don't think that the state school superintendent or the legislature should be in a position to make decisions on this. I think that Georgia Equality, an organization I've been supported by in the past, and other LGBT serving organizations and youth serving organizations ought to sit at the table with the Georgia High School Association and come up with rules that are fair and just for all students. So regardless of a student's background, regardless of their gender, regardless of their status, I think that we ought to make sure that students have an opportunity to participate in the sports that they choose, that they're able to display their athletic ability. But I think the High School Association, Georgia Equality, and other organizations ought to sit at a table and figure out what is the best way to make sure that all students have access to opportunities.
Thank you. Ms. Hitchens.
Hey guys, hopefully you can still hear me. If you can't, please let me know and I'll try to move around a little bit to make it easier. But I am a part of the LGBTQ community and definitely support transgender students. And I think that what the legislature was doing is bully children who are already very vulnerable and already are at higher risk for suicide than many other children in our country and in our state. I think we definitely, like Ms. Searcy just said, need to get together to look at what kind of rules would be reasonable and make sense to work with this. I think we can look at a lot of other organizations that have already done this, including the International Olympic Committee. So if the International Olympic Committee can figure this out and see what's going to be a reasonable thing to do, then I think probably the Georgia Athletic Associations can also do that. And it's definitely not okay to try to just ban these kids, because a lot of us probably participated in school sports and team sports as children, and we know how important those things can be to kids in school. So we definitely need to support these kids and not bully them. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, Mr. Howard.
Thank you for the question. I can't help but think about my patients who are transgender males and transgender females. I can't help but think about parents in my office. I can't help but think about the students who are in my area in Cobb County, where I represent them as a school board member. And what I'm noticing from those conversations is that we all have a lot to learn about transgender rights, transgender biological processes, what's happening, the medical procedures that our children are under and considering. We have a lot to learn. And I'm also learning that going house to house and door to door, the everyday citizen doesn't know very much at all. We have a community that needs real conversation, that appreciates nuance. And to the point that some of my colleagues have made here, the worst place that we need to deal and kind of address this is in the state legislature, where people are using laws as a weapon as opposed to a shield. So we have to just change our entire approach to achieve excellence, do it with compassion, do it by actually listening to one another and really hearing so we can find those solutions. Again, we're not the only state to walk these roads, and we have to do this in a very smart way, in a very intelligent way, and a compassionate way. So thank you for that question.
And thank you. Well, we'll move on to question 3 now. The COVID pandemic highlights the gross inequalities in our student population. As too many students have returned to in-school learning, it has become evident that their academic, behavior, and emotional vulnerabilities have been amplified. Consequently, there is now an even wider achievement gap and a broader range of issues that all educators must deal with. How would you address this emergency? Now we will begin with Ms. Searcy.
Thank you. I appreciate this question in particular because I have experience as a superintendent and also as a mom who has had to navigate this with 3 children along with my husband. And it's been tough on all of us, especially our students. And so first and foremost, I think we have to deal with mental health concerns that we have among our students and among our educators. Educators need that level of support as well, because they too are dealing with not just their own challenges, but the things that our babies are coming into school with. There are districts, every district, of course, received CARES Act funds, and they need to be using those funds for intense tutoring. We have a lot of gaps that we need to close. That means after school, it means weekend. I also think it would be really nice to see districts use some of those funds to hire other students to provide tutoring so that young people could earn money while also providing some services to young people. We've got to make sure that those funds are used for more social workers. And we also have to make sure that we are able to pay for counselors and other types of social services. I do want to point out that the challenges that we are seeing in schools are not new. I think the pandemic simply exacerbated those issues. And what I'm afraid of, frankly, is having a state superintendent who doesn't understand education or one who's been asleep at the wheel for 8 years. And so if we don't take advantage of this moment to rethink, reimagine what education should look like, shame on us. And so we need to leverage this moment to move our schools forward, get students the support that they need, and ensure we close these gaps quickly.
Thank you. We'll go on now to Ms. Hitchens.
Thank you. So I definitely love students with disabilities. I'm going to move closer and I see represented students with disabilities. is, let me wait till it's working, is make sure to ask the Department of Education to give guidance for how to serve those students during the pandemic, because those students also fell far behind, including the students, as you were saying, who are in all the other vulnerable populations, but students with disabilities as well. A lot of them need hand over hand or in-person contact and didn't get it at all during the pandemic, because schools were not only closed, but also not sending people into the community to go deal and work and help those students and give them their services that they deserved. But Alicia is right. We definitely need to reimagine education, and this is our opportunity to do so. We got a lot of money, I think $4.9 billion from the American Rescue Plan and even more from the CARES Act, that we need to use, not just to continue doing the same old, but to actually reassess education in Georgia and make sure we meet all the needs of all the children. This is our opportunity. I do agree that we need to right now start with looking at emotional intelligence and getting counseling and mental health of our students and teachers and everyone in the school building, because everyone has been through a trauma together, sometimes a little bit separately because we actually weren't together, but we all went through a trauma, and the students are younger and they went through this trauma without any experience and capability to be able to handle it. I think we can reimagine schools in Georgia, and I'm definitely the person to do that, and I'm excited to do that. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Howard.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the question. As we know, the pandemic really just exposed the challenges and exacerbated the challenges that were already present. Now, I want to share something with you just to add something to the conversation here. Public education. Learn that it can change. It can be flexible. Our teachers, our school districts, our students, we can work together and do some things in an incredible way. Many of you know that communities came together, churches, nonprofit organizations, for-profit companies, all put a hand in to make sure that the bedrock of public education was strong, even in its worst attack with the pandemic. Now, of course, we're still reeling from what happened with the pandemic, but we learned some things. We can do some things differently through collaboration. And that's why we're at a unique time where we need a leader that can bring some other things to the table, aside from what we always do in education. Connect some dots, work collaboratively in a way that we've never seen before. We know that right now, Georgia is the #1 place to do business, but you don't hear us also say that we're the #1 place to educate children. And that is going to be our goal, excellence with compassion. We have so many great ideas when it comes to early literacy, when it comes to making sure that students have access to instruction, no matter what their circumstances are in their school. And I look forward to leading the way with your help, because we don't do anything alone. I appreciate that.
Okay, Mr. Morrow.
All right, as you already know, COVID has placed schools like 2.5 years behind, and many times when it first started, many of the students didn't have internet or Wi-Fi access, so that put them at a disadvantage, especially the students in the rural areas. So we got to make sure that we can't forget about them. Another thing is that teachers, well, I wouldn't say forced, but they were asked to show compassion, whereas, a lot of kids wouldn't even log on when we were doing virtual. They'll log on to take roll, and then they'll turn their camera off and go back to sleep. And so I just feel like we got to find a way to get those kids caught up, like Ms. Cersei said, some type of tutoring or mediation. They have those, but a lot of times kids don't show up. I did it for like a year, and I did it for economics, U.S. history, government, and political science. And I might have 3 students show up, whereas it should have been more like 35 or 40 students there. So we got to find a way for the encouraged students to try to catch up, because like I said, they're behind. Teachers were giving kids 70%, and before COVID even happened, that was going on in middle schools. Whereas teachers were forced to give kids like 50% just for placing their names on their paper. So it's like, it gave them like a false sense of security, because once those kids get to high school, teachers don't give grades in high school, but in middle school they do. I have a lot of students currently that are in the 9th and 10th grade that has a Lexile score of a 4 of 500, which means they're reading on a 3rd and 4th grade level. And I question, how did they make it all the way to high school? And it bothers me because all of this was going on before COVID even occurred. So you need somebody that understands what's going on, that's in the trenches, that's on the front line, and have an understanding of what needs to be done to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you all. Question number 4. Graduation results from charter schools nationwide are generally no better than those of traditional public schools. Can you justify sending public funds to schools that are not always accountable or have profit as their main goal? Let's begin with Ms. Hitchens.
Sure. I don't think we should have any schools that have profit as a main goal in any kind of school system, especially not one that gets public funding. I don't want any schools to make a profit. I do want public schools to be able to pay their teachers well, of course. I do know that in Georgia, we have a charter school system, whereas we do approve charter schools within a state charter school and then within school systems. And I know that already exists, and a lot of people are enjoying that because you might sometimes have a choice. But I do want us to be careful and thoughtful about that system so that we don't put a charter school somewhere, especially one that's going to be a for-profit model, and that we don't put a charter school somewhere that's going to try to shut down the public school in that area. We need to make sure that we're careful about this. I do think that this is the only way really that is okay to maybe have some choice in our schools. I don't agree with having a school voucher program, except for the SB 10 voucher, which goes to kids with special needs we already have. But I think that having a charter school program is going to it's a nuanced issue, basically. We need to be very careful about where we put charter schools, where we approve them, and how we fund them, and make sure we don't take any money away from public schools just to have a charter school. And if a charter school gets that money for a child, then the child leaves, the charter school should not keep that money. It should go with the child back to the school the child goes to, for example. I do think it's a nuanced issue. We're going to have to look into it a lot, but we already have a lot of charter schools in our state. So we need to try to work with them because they are part of the public school system in Georgia. But I do think that any schools that are trying to be a money-making institution is not okay. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Okay, now we'll hear from Mr. Howard.
Thank you for the question. I mean, we just have to be real. There are some people with really good intentions, and charter schools in its original form to use as a laboratory to kind of find some new and best practices and new ideas, innovative ideas. That's still a great thing that we can use. But the problem is that we have too many people who are greedy, and the for-profit charter model and sometimes the non-for-profit charter model, we have people who are working overtime to fundamentally change how we see public education, to make it about school choice, charter, vouchers. And there's not very many people who have been able to stand up and say this is wrong. As a community member, I've stood up against this. As an elected official, we make sure we're promoting public education. And I want everyone to do their homework about the education record of the candidates who are on this panel. And it'll become very clear, because you may not hear it in a forum. But we have to make sure we are careful, because all of those charter schools, many of them, I should say, have money attached to them, strings attached to them. And we want to make sure that if we are going to elect a state school superintendent, it's somebody who's going to have a high value of public education, who works collaboratively with the community, not in a way that can oftentimes destroy a community. Again, some people mean very well, but we have to make sure that we're working smarter in a way that our people, our communities have a voice, and our children have everything they need to make sure that they're successful. Excellence and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow?
All right. Education is turned into a business. And I feel like, they're really not concerned about the child. The graduation rates are a bunch of lies. A lot of times schools say they have 89, 90% graduation rates, but basically they just inflated the grades and push the grades through. Push the kids through. Now, charter schools, they don't play by the same rules as regular public schools. Some charter schools, they get to pick and choose which students they want to keep. And if you have habitual disciplinary issues, they're able to put you out and send you back to your regular home school, whereas public schools, they don't have the same opportunity to do that. Every student in Georgia with a school district receive anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 per student. And so, one of the things that I've learned about schools that, they'll do anything to keep the kids in school. That's why I feel like in-school suspension was created, because if most students have more than 10 days of absences, then some of that federal funding has to go back. So no, I don't feel that charter schools should receive the same funding that public schools receive. And as Ms. Cersei is probably going to talk about, she was a superintendent of a charter school, so she'll probably give us a better understanding of how that works. Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, finally, Ms. Cersei.
Thank you. You're right, Mr. Morrow. I was a superintendent of a charter school network of schools. And I think it's really important when we have any discussion to always start from a place of facts. And unfortunately, when you have a lawyer, a dentist, and others that may not understand state laws, sometimes you have misinformation. And just because someone repeats misinformation doesn't make it factual. So first of all, charter schools in Georgia, and I'm only talking about Georgia, every state has their own set of charter laws, Georgia is a state that all charters are public schools. There are no charter schools in Georgia that are for-profit, period. I'm a former state lawmaker, so I'm probably the expert among the four of us on this issue because I served in the legislature for 12 years, and this was an issue that we dealt with quite a bit. Also important to note that it is not true that charter schools can choose and pick who they want. Like any other public school, they have to follow guidelines based on the zone that they have for their schools. As someone who ran charter schools, I was more accountable for the schools that I led than a traditional public school. If our test scores were lower than the district, then our school was closed. I think that's the highest form of accountability there could actually be. I think what's missing in this conversation is what parents want. And if you look into Cobb County and Clayton and states and places all over the state, parents like myself want options within the public school system. And I think it's most important for me to say and put it on record right now, I have never voted for a voucher. I have never been a champion for vouchers or private education. I have always and will continue to be a proud advocate for public education. And anyone who has anything different to say, I would welcome you to look at my record, as Jaha said, and you will see the facts versus the misinformation that continues to get spread around.
Thank you. Question number 5. What is your philosophy on high stakes testing to determine a student's progress or ability to thrive in colleges and universities? And this question came about because a lot of institutions are dropping the SAT and the ACT. And so could we begin with Mr. Howard, please?
Thank you so much for that question. We know that the culture of high stakes testing has just been detrimental to our communities, not just in Georgia, but across the country. And it's been a Democratic problem and a Republican problem. I mean, bad ideas can cut both ways, and our children have suffered for that. We have to begin a new culture where we make sure that we're testing in a way that's a part of educating our kids, but not changing the culture of it. So just these formative assessments along the way, and once in a while, yes, we may have to do some milestones and all of that, but we should never be in a situation as we have in the past, where almost a quarter of the school year is about test preparation and test taking. Like almost a quarter of the school year for test preparation and test taking. That's a problem. And too often we end up dumbing down the curriculum to where we're just laser focused on reading and math only. Our kids deserve better. And again, I'm somebody who's coming with a fresh perspective. Time and time again, when I've had conversations with our public school superintendents and districts across the state, they tell me, you know what we need? We need someone with a backbone, someone that's actually going to listen to us and stand up for our children in a room full of political sharks. Everyone's not going to give you that. It's easy to say a thing, it's harder to do a thing. And I'm glad that now is this unique time where we can come to public education with a fresh perspective, one that is working collaboratively for our onboarding of our students and collaboratively to make sure that our offboarding and that our off-ramp is working really, really well for college and career, and holding a high esteem for all of the choices that our children have. So I appreciate the conversation, and I look forward to even working with our colleagues here on the panel to make that happen.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Morrow.
Thank you. All right, so testing, it brings anxiety to teachers. A lot of times teachers feel like they have to focus on teaching the test instead of teaching to the curriculum. So the scores, basically, they come from absences. A lot of times kids don't show up for class, and the teachers, they're blamed basically for the students being absent and not be able to receive the material that they need in order to be successful on the test. So one of the things we're gonna have to do is find a way to get students to come to class. And that would basically be something to deal with as far as parent accountability. But teachers receive bad evaluations when they have low test scores. And again, like I said, a lot of times kids don't come to school and they don't get the information they need when it's time for them to take the high stakes test. So I feel like that really testing of that nature should not be necessary. I feel like as long as the kids are passing and they're receiving the information that they need in the curriculum, that would help them be successful. But another thing, all students are not college material. So I feel like we need to bring some type of vocational skills within the schools, whereas when a student graduates, they have their CDL license or they have their apprenticeship license where they can be an electrician or a plumber or cosmetology or something of that nature. Because again, every kid doesn't want to go to college, and forcing these kids to take college-ready courses is not going to do anything but cause them to shut down. So we got to provide other opportunities for them instead of just the regular curriculum that's being taught. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Searcy.
I look at testing from a parenting perspective. One of the things that we learned during the pandemic is that not having high stakes testing doesn't kill anybody. And I think the lesson that we also learned is that we need to rethink the purpose of testing, especially high stakes testing. It's why in the last couple of years, I've opted out for my 15-year-old to take the milestone, because I see in her eyes, I hear in her voice every year, the fear of taking the test and what happens if she doesn't pass, and the pressure that teachers are under, and then pass that pressure on to students. And so we have to rethink why it is that we're using testing. I think it is important to assess students. We need to know where they are. We need to understand if they've mastered what we're teaching them. We also need to use assessment so that we can see how effective a teacher is. And so if there is a challenge, that we can actually provide some professional development and support for them. But at the end of the day, in our state, and I think states across the country, we don't use high stakes testing for anything other than to measure states against states, talk about who's performing and who's not. But I'm not sure students are actually helped or teachers are actually better because of high stakes testing. So I think we've got to rethink what it is we're using testing for and make sure that it's to support students and their growth and development, as well as the growth and development of teachers.
Thank you. And now let's hear from Ms. Hitchens.
Great, thank you. And I agree with everyone's answers so far. They're spot on. I was a teacher, and when I taught, I did not like, honestly, high stakes testing and all the statewide or national kind of tests, because you kind of dropped the actual education to sit around and, sit quietly and do a test that wasn't going to be used for anything, really. I really much preferred doing formative assessment and assessment like as you went along, an informal assessment of my students to see where they were, what they had learned, and what we needed to look at next. And you can't really do that on a national or even a state level because each class is going to be different. So you need to be able to assess your class and not have to compare them to other kids and stress them out and stress out the teachers. Is what that leads to is, well, let's just look at it. The APS cheating scandal is what that led to. High stakes testing led to teachers being so stressed out that that's what they felt like they had to do, help students cheat or actually just cheat for them. And as a society that our kids did well in a test, we need our kids to actually learn, be able to go to college if they want to, have a career if they want to. We need to educate them well and stop spending so much time learning about how to do a test. We can definitely do better in Georgia, and we can lead the nation by doing less of these high stakes tests and actually doing some of those assessments that matter and that do benefit the children and the teachers. And I think Georgia can lead the way in that. And that's what I think about high stakes testing. And I wanted to say quickly that I wasn't trying to say we have for-profit charter schools. The question was, should we have for-profit charter schools? And my answer was no, I don't think that we have them. You're right. And I think the law actually prohibits them in Georgia. They all have to be nonprofits. And I agree that that should stay that way and that they are public schools, which is, I agree with that as well. They are. They're part of the public school system. Thank you very much. Though no high stakes testing is what I would say, or a lot less of it. Thank you.
Thank you all. We have time, I think, to address at least one question in the chat. The first one that came in from Deborah Doolin is, how can you ensure that critical thinking skills are included in the curriculum, since some may confuse it with CRT, with critical race theory? Does anyone want to take that on?
Sure, probably all of us can, but yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll start with Ms. Hitchens.
Okay. Thank you. Sure. Critical thinking skills are very important skills that every student should learn and we should use throughout the curriculum. And in fact, they are required to be taught throughout the curriculum in many areas, and we need to have those skills. And I think we can use our critical thinking skills and maybe even ask students to help us to teach people in Georgia that that is important and that it's different than critical race theory, which is also important, but not necessarily something that's going to be taught in K through 12 schools. But we should use our critical thinking skills to analyze media and news and history even, and books that we read and even children's literature. We can use our critical thinking skills. And I think we can make it clear to people that it's not the same as critical race theory. And even I would say, involve the children to help us do that. Okay, children, you're learning these critical thinking skills. Let's show them how it's different and what that means to use critical thinking skills.
Thank you. Ms. Searcy?
I haven't heard the confusion between CRT and critical race theory. I do want to point out, though, that the whole purpose of Common Core is to increase critical thinking within among our students. We worked very hard at the national level to standardize curriculum, or standardized standards, I should say, across the state to make sure that there was equity, that if you move from Georgia to Tennessee, that you'd have access to the same high quality, rigorous education. And that was the whole purpose of Common Core. It's why math is a little bit more complicated than it should be, because our goal is to make sure that students are always thinking critically. It's an important skill to have. If you talk to students, they will tell you that they want to learn and they want to have an education that's much more relevant, that is much more meaningful. And part of the goal of Common Core, which is not the sexiest term anymore, but it is what we use in Georgia, and we adopted that several years ago. I served on a national panel with then Secretary Duncan to help states adopt and implement Common Core standards. So we do have that in our curriculum now. It is also about training teachers to make sure that their depth of knowledge levels reaches critical thinking, and that students are doing more than bubbling yes or no, but instead having to answer with essays, even in math and across content areas, so that they're using those critical thinking skills to arrive at their answers. Great question.
Thank you. Jahad, did you say you wanted? Yeah.
Just I'll briefly add, and I appreciate the comments already made. I'll just briefly add that this is where leadership matters. This is where you need someone who can speak very clearly about how important it is to think critically. I sure wish, and this is part of why I'm running. When we have a superintendent, when critical race theory is raging, when it got to Georgia, we should have had a state superintendent that stood up side by side with district superintendents all over the state and say, look, CRT is not in our curriculum, but what we are going to focus on is making sure that our children are reading. What we are going to focus on is to make sure that our children are thinking critically. He had an opportunity to do that, and he failed time and time and time again. And so I'm really glad that this came up, because this is exactly what a state superintendent is supposed to do.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Morrow, did you want to comment?
Yes, just briefly. I agree with the other three candidates, but many students, they already have critical thinking skills, but I feel like it's up to the teachers to help it bring it out of them. And as far as my definition of critical thinking skills is like being able to read between the lines without reading the whole story. And a lot of times, many of these kids, they have critical thinking skills when it comes to things that they want to learn or what they care about. But it's very important that we focus on kids K through 5th grade, to make sure they acquire critical thinking skills during those times. That way it will help them once they make it to middle school and high school. So I feel like it's very vital to focus on kindergarten through 5th grade. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time here. Gloria, should we take one more question or go to the closing statements?
If you have another question that you'd like to take.
Well, there are a couple more in the chat. One of them is kind of a long question. I guess let's go with it.
Throw it out there.
All right, just a minute. It's up here a little bit further back. Sorry. I want to be fair here. The next one that came in. Well, I'm going to read this one. The education system in America is broken, period. Schools get state and federal funding, which may not be for profit, but the goal of getting the funds has often been priority over the children. How will you forge a better connection between the schools, the public, and private sectors to holistically educate our children? Any takers?
I'll just generally comment here, because I can go a lot of different directions.
Okay.
But I'll say that our public education is moving at one speed. Business is moving at a completely different speed. And what we're lacking are people who can understand a little bit about business, right? And a lot of it about education, and start connecting these dots and getting the right people at the table to build trust. And that way we can work collaboratively and have a win-win type of attitude. This goes with our not-for-profits. This goes with our businesses, goes with our community members. We have an incredible opportunity. Folks now have an imagination that a community can actually work together to make sure that the bedrock of our communities, which are our schools, can make sure it's working in a better way, in a way that we've never seen before. And COVID really brought that to light. So we have an opportunity, but you have to have somebody who has that type of experience that can move in different circles to see how public education fits in the broader ecosystem. And as a dad of 3 kids in public schools who are 3 very different learners, right? As an employer in working with men and women who have their own families in schools and going through their challenges, understanding how public education, healthcare, childcare, housing crisis, the gun sales epidemic, ICE raids, all of these things that seemingly don't connect, they absolutely intersect in our schools.
Okay, thank you.
So I really look forward to that collaboration. I think there's opportunity, and I think there's an appetite for it.
Very good. And anybody else want to
Sure.
speak? All right, Ms. Hitchens.
Hi, thank you. I think everyone's definitely right. We definitely need to work together and collaborate, and we need to help families get housing, hopefully universal housing, universal daycare, all kind of things to be put in place. And those things would help families, and that would help children in schools, of course, to have stable housing and care for their parents to be able to work. So all these things together are going to help make schools better. And I think we can use the schools as part of this and use community school strategies to make it so that the schools are going to be the hubs of a community. And of course, they'll have to work with businesses and everyone else in the community and partner with them. And I know we do get a lot of our funding from the state and from federal money, as the question says. But the people in the community are even more important, really, than the funding. And we can use those, I guess, the human resources, the human capital in our communities to make schools better, because it's not always about just the money. It's about pulling together the right individuals, the right companies, the right whoever it is that can actually make education better in Georgia. Because right now we are struggling and we need to increase the quality. I know we talked earlier about trying to mediate or remediate, I guess, learning from after COVID. After might be the wrong word, but anyway, from the COVID time when the schools were closed, to try to remediate that learning. I think it might be more important to try to improve the quality of their learning than to try to give the kids more time in school or more extra additional time. Because like you heard Mr. Morrow say, they don't seem to have the capacity to do more. Let's give them higher quality instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Searcy, do you want to speak?
Absolutely. I think education works only when all of its stakeholders are involved. I also own a business and certainly have a number of years in education experience. And as a superintendent, one of the things that we did in my schools is partnered with the State Department of Education, along with entities outside of our schools. And we hosted on Wednesdays, professional development Wednesdays for our students. And we brought in people from industry, from nonprofits, from the faith community to come in and teach our young people skills like public speaking, like entrepreneurship, like financial management, like college success. And so there are opportunities across the board, and we've seen it in many districts where business and faith and community and education are all coming together. I agree with you that we have a challenge, though, when we talk about funding and who the funding belongs to. I'm always a parent first, and I believe that the dollars associated with my child are for her education in the public education system. And no system is the keeper of those dollars. I'm a taxpayer, and those dollars ought to go to what's going to make my child ready to graduate from high school with a clear plan and where she's going and what she's going to do. And we benefit when we have all of these stakeholders working together. And to me, that's the only way that our education system is going to work.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow.
Yes, thank you. I feel the education system is going to continue to be broken until some type of discipline or accountability is put in place. A lot of times, kids, they get away with a lot of things throughout school, and then once they graduate, walk across that stage and receive their diploma, the things they got away with in school, they're going to go to jail for it. So there has to be some type of accountability. I'll give you an example. On a Monday, I caught a student smoking a marijuana blunt. On Wednesday, I caught the same student having sex in the foyer of the lobby. He received 1 day in-school suspension. So, with that going on, when other kids see that, but there's no consequences, it's going to continue to happen. So until we have some consequences or some type of accountability. And I know a lot of parents probably won't agree with this, but I feel like if your child is suspended, they should not be allowed to return back to school until their mother, their father, grandmother, somebody shadows them around the school for an entire day. Go to lunch with them and everything. And then they'll be allowed to come back to school. But because I feel like if parents have to miss work, or if they have to set up in the classroom with their child on their off day, that's going to force them to hold their child accountable, and it's going to improve their behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, candidates, now it is your opportunity to make closing statements, and we'll begin with Mr. Morrow.
All right, thank you. All right. Again, my name is James Morrow. I've been a teacher for the past 25 years. I received my Bachelor's of Arts degree in history and a minor in physical education and health from the University of Arkansas in Pine Bluff in 1997. Afterwards, I became the head men's basketball coach at Philander Smith College, which is a small HBCU downtown Little Rock, Arkansas. I left there and I started working in Little Rock School District, and from Little Rock to Las Vegas, then from Atlanta Public Schools to here in Clayton. And I feel like I'm the best candidate because, again, I'm in the trenches, I'm on the front line. I know what teachers feel. I know what they're thinking. And I know what they go through. And at no time should a teacher be angry, leaving work, and be upset about coming to work. But a lot of my coworkers, they feel this. Many times administrators give teachers bad evaluations based on how they feel about them rather than their performance as a classroom teacher. So this right here causes teachers to leave the profession. We can't do anything without teachers. You can say we're going to do this for the kids, we're going to do that for the kids. But currently in the United States, there's a shortage of 80,000 teachers. And in my school district, Clayton County, we have a shortage of 200 teachers, where we might have 5 permanent subs. And whenever we don't have a sub, by me being in physical education, they just dump them in the gym. So I might be watching 2 to 250 students by myself. Another problem is special permission. At Jonesboro High, where I teach, we currently have 400 students that have special permission to go to our school, and they live in Cobb County, DeKalb County, Fulton County. So I feel like that's a major issue that needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Searcy, you're next.
I want to thank the DeKalb Democrats for having this forum and allowing us the opportunity to share our passion and our platforms. I'm also appreciative of the opportunity to set the record straight. Again, we can take what people say as fact, or we can actually do our research. And I would encourage everyone to do as Mr. Howard said, to do the research and see of the 4 of us who actually has the experience to do this job. State school superintendent is a policy position. It's not a dental position. It's not a teaching position. It's not a lawyered position. It's a policy position. And I'm the only one in this race who actually has state policy experience, who has worked with the Department of Education once I passed a law as a legislator to work and make sure that the rules were promulgated as such. I'm the only one in this race who has actually led schools before, hired principals, hired teachers, worked with the State Department of Education to make sure that our federal programs and special education programs were all in compliance. This is a very serious time in education. I have a lot of respect for educators who are in classrooms today, who are in schools today, doing the difficult work. And what they need is a champion, someone who understands, who has been there, who doesn't just talk, who can give lots of platitudes and nice talking points, but can actually talk about solid plans, the work that's going to be done on behalf of children. I'm running because I have a sense of urgency to get this right for our kids, because the 3 of mine matter, and so do the 1.8 million students in Georgia matter. They need to have a state school superintendent who is experienced, who is prepared, who will be ready on day 1, who doesn't need on-the-job training. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hitchens.
Thank you. Sorry, I know you guys missed a lot of what I said to begin with. I'm so sorry about that. I'm at a band book festival and it was a quiet area at first, and then people came over, of course, right before we started. I'm really sorry about that. And I'm glad I found a spot that seems to be working. So I'll quickly go into some of that. I grew up in Whitfield County, Georgia, which is northwest Georgia, near like kind of between Dalton and Chattanooga as part of it. Dalton's in Whitfield County, actually. I was in the public school system there, kindergarten through 12th grade. Both my parents were teachers there and in some other counties in the area. And my aunt and uncle were also teachers there, including my uncle was a principal for a long time. And basically the way my mom tells it, I was almost born in North Whitfield Middle School, which is where I went to middle school, and then went on to Agnes Scott College, and then Emory for law school, and University of Georgia for my master's in education. And I taught and went to law school and have a pretty deep understanding of how laws work in Georgia and how they're then interpreted and developed in case law by attorneys. And that's exactly what I am experienced in doing and ready to do. One thing I do all the time is cases against the Department of Education, which I know that's where I would be working, but I'm not working there yet. I still have some cases against the Department of Education right now to try to make it so that schools who are failing to educate a child who is not receiving a free and appropriate public education and does have an individualized education program, which means he has a disability for which the school has to serve him, making sure the school gives him those services. I have that kind of case right now against the school. Oh, I'm sorry, my time is up, but I have a lot of experience in education law and would really love to jump in and start off doing a lot of good changes in Georgia. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And last, Mr. Howard.
Thank you so much. I'm just, again, thankful to be here among adults that have an imagination of something better. We don't need to do things the way that we've been doing it. Georgia has constantly been below average on almost every measurable way, in almost every measurable way with our public education. We're moving forward. This state has walked around and touted #1 for business. And that's a wonderful thing. And I look forward to true leadership and vision. And we're going to provide it to be #1 in education, the #1 place to educate your child. We are going to be a state that has pipeline programs for future educators starting in high school to develop the next line of educators across the state, the next line of public health providers and police and firemen. And this is what's going to happen with me as superintendent. We're going to connect dots. There's so many great people, so many great programs that are happening, but folks are in their own silos. I can't tell you how many times I've heard talking to educators and students and administrators, and they're like, look, we don't need somebody with several decades and they did this and they did that. We need somebody that's going to bring us together and help see how it all fits together in the broader ecosystem. That's what we provide. We're going to connect dots. I know it's going to take some thinking outside of what we're used to, but that's what our country did. That's what our state did when we elected Raphael Warnock and Ossoff. This is what we did. We didn't just look for the person that had the most years. They said, who is the best leader? And that's what's happening now. Okay. And I look forward to your vote for Georgia State School Superintendent. Let's do it together, where our children are our #1 focus and our only special interest. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us in this forum. School issues are so important, and it's been really helpful to learn about the Democratic candidates who are offering time and expertise by running for state school superintendent.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, candidates. As I said, after our first forum with the insurance commissioners, I learned a lot, and I appreciate everyone putting the energy and time into this forum. DeKalb Dems wants to support all of our Democratic candidates, and we really appreciate that you have stepped up and are prepared, and you're giving us solid information. We do appreciate you being here. We also appreciate all of the folks who have joined us today as our audience on Zoom, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. And this video will be available to our candidates. If you would like to share any parts of it, any clips from it, we are perfectly happy for you to do that, and we'll provide it for you. And would also like for all of the candidates that are here today, that if you're still on the program, still here, please come on camera. And also, if my team is here, I would love for all of you, my co-chair, Steve Parker, all of our folks that have been working behind the scenes, planning this and implementing it today, Paula Anderson, Bo Tillman, our other moderator, Karen Davenport, Elisa Hamilton. Thank you all, and everyone else who has participated with us, for being here this afternoon. Thank you for your time and your energy. And we will see you hopefully next Wednesday at our Secretary of State Forum. Another critical job, but also another opportunity to elect Democrats. Thank you all.
Thank you.